The Sony A7R Mark II was announced yesterday and represents a serious upgrade to the Sony A7R. Honestly, I'm feeling a bit giddy about this camera and the potential it presents for photography and videography. Is this the camera that so many of us have been waiting for? Well, I need to rein in my excitement until I get hands-on, but let's start by running through the spec list. We've got a 42 megapixel BSI sensor. BSI means backside illuminated. This is the first in a full-frame sensor. Most recently, Samsung used this technology in their NX1 and NX500, and it translates into some of the best high ISO performance from any crop sensor. So this technology paired with a full-frame sensor should yield some excellent results, and Sony has bumped the expanded ISO available up to 102,000. I expect that to be noisy, but we should get some very clean files at what we now generally consider to be normal high ISO ranges, and side by side with the new Canon 5D series, I expect significant improvements over what those Canon cameras can offer in low light performance. We also have internal 4K video recording, no external recorders needed. And like the Sony A7S, this is a full sensor readout, which should yield excellent quality with a minimum of moire. You have 30 and 24 frames per second at 4K, 60 at 1080, and excellent slow-mo options at 120 frames a second at 720p. Additionally, in-body image stabilization up to 4.5 stops. Now, I recently reviewed the Sony A7R Mark II a few months ago and found the in-body image stabilization to be impressive. At the extreme, I was able to get blurred water photos handheld. The implications for landscapes without a tripod, low-light interiors, and shooting stabilized video with any lens is sweet. So let's pause here for a second and balance this with some drawbacks. My complaints about the original Sony A7R, autofocus was slow, dreadfully slow when used with a Metabones adapter that would allow me to use my Canon lenses, and the shutter was obnoxiously loud with a slight potential to cause vibrations that negatively impacted the sharpness of your image, just slightly. But jumping back into the specs, it seems Sony has listened, and we now have 399 autofocus points. And even more importantly, the speed has been improved. 40% faster is Sony's claim, and early demos are supporting these claims. When I reviewed the Sony A7R Mark II, I found its focus to be more than good for 90% of what I was shooting, and the A7R Mark II looks faster than that camera. And the phase detection system continues to work well with adapters. Sony has demonstrated some impressive autofocusing when using Canon lenses with Metabones adapters. This autofocus can also be used in good video, providing good autofocus tracking. The shutter mechanism has been redesigned to be quieter, and you have the option of using an electronic shutter for 100% completely vibration-free photos. The viewfinder and the tilting LCD have increased resolution, and the viewfinder is going to offer the world's highest magnification. This is going to give you a bright and beautiful view of the scene. However, that LCD is not touchscreen. We have Wi-Fi and NFC, and the ability to purchase apps to extend the functionality of the camera are nice, but that honestly bothers me a little to spend $10 on an app when I just handed Sony $3,000 for a camera. But overall, these specs sound pretty sweet, so there must be some drawbacks. Well, I see no indication that battery life has been improved, and I found both the Sony A7R Mark II with in-body image stabilization burning through batteries quickly. Thinking about shooting 4K and having in-body image stabilization on, all I can say is stock up on some batteries. They use the same as the Sony Alpha line currently. Buy a battery grip and or bring along a USB charger. And, I appreciate that you can use that charger to charge your camera in the field, or that USB charger to charge your camera in the field. I'm also curious about speed performances outside of the autofocus system. The A7 and A7R Mark II cameras were rather slow to start up, wake from sleep, and while it isn't a huge deal, I'd wonder if we expect any performance improvements there. We also have the issue of Sony compressing their RAW file formats. They are not lossless files, as most RAW file formats are. I hesitated to even bring this up because I think this has been made a bigger deal on the internet than it actually translates to in real-world shooting for 99% of us. In working with all of these RAW files, I found plenty of information and have not run into the kind of artifacts that some people are talking about, but it does make you pause when you're spending this much on a camera and it is being touted as a 42 megapixel scenic landscape dream. And this is also where I generally caution people that buying into a line like Sony is buying into a smaller ecosystem of lenses and accessories. But, you know, this drawback too is rapidly diminishing. There is a great selection of FE lenses that include fast primes, decent telephotos, and even a solid macro. You don't have many cheap lens options, but what you do have is high quality glass. And really, are you going to put a cheap lens on a $3,000 42 megapixel camera? And you have the addition of the adapter route, using either Sony's FE to alpha mount adapter or the Metabones, giving you access to Canon's huge lens selection, while now maintaining decent or even good autofocusing capabilities. Cost is going to be $3,198 for body only. Pre-order is going to start June 17th, and the camera is going to be available in August. Overall, this is a significant advancement of the Sony Alpha line. It makes me curious when we'll see a successor to the Sony Alpha 7S, since that camera is touted as being able to shoot 4K but can't do it in body. But I want to know, how interested are you in the Sony Alpha 7 Mark II, Alpha 7R Mark II? Leave your comments below. I'm going to be collecting the best for sharing on next week's Mishmash show, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. You can join us live. And if you appreciated this video, take a moment to hit the thumbs up button. If you want to follow along and see if I sell all my Canon gear and jump to Sony, subscribe or follow me on Instagram. You know, it's not often that I talk about, in fact, I've never really talked about honestly jumping ship from Canon. We have a huge selection of gear, lenses, flashes. This is the first camera that really has come along and ticked most of my boxes for what I need with the fewest drawbacks. And it is very impressive. All right, that's the final word. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.